Hello everybody, my name's Nick Phillips. I'm a music producer, composer, artist and sound designer. What I'm going to do, I've got about 10 slides with different examples of all the various types of work that I do, and I'll go through each one and then I can talk about the background behind it and what led me to that point, and can answer any questions, and I'll move through. So this is the first slide. I'm in a band called The New Sins, and this is a single which started being promoted this Friday just gone, and this is the lead single for a new album which is going to be coming out this year. This is basically how I started doing music. I started as an artist about 20 years ago, making my own records. I went into a club, heard a record that I loved, and I wanted to learn how to make it. So I started going into a studio, paying an engineer, taking my records in, sampling, and for a year I basically learned how to make a record, which at the end of that year I had a record, then I set up a label, released it, and that was the beginning of my journey into making music and working in sound. And I'm still doing it 20 years later. I love doing it, and this is a new project. This working as an artist, I then started working with a lot of vocalists, a lot of singers, which naturally led me into producing other artists. This is an artist called Igor Volk, and I'm about to finish an album with him. This is a single we released last year. I'm going to just play you a short clip of this video. Okay, I'll stop that there. I'll explain a bit about this. Working with an artist as a producer, it's very much about kind of finding what the artist is about, getting that out of them, and you're not there to, it's definitely a kind of collaboration of different skills. It's honing out the creativity of the artist, what their vision is. Igor and I have worked together for about 3 years now, and we've developed a sound, and we're now on the home stretch of an album. All this music, and pretty much most of the music that I'm going to show you tonight, I mix and produce and record all on my laptop that I'm doing this presentation on. I go into different studios with different setups, record a lot of live musicians. So the process of producing an artist is kind of similar to creating your own music, except you've always kind of thinking about the vision of the artist and what the end result is. And then it's not just the creativity. I'm listening to mixes, listening to what's happening. I'm referencing music, old and new. So it's a combination of creativity and technical, and it's kind of jumping between those aspects all the time. Okay, so that's a piece that I wrote for LA Noire, and I wrote it on a computer, and then it was orchestrated by a very amazingly talented orchestrator called Simon Hale, and we then went to Abbey Road and had a day which was the most amazing experience, recording a 43-piece orchestra, we recorded the whole score for LA Noire, which was about 45 minutes of music in one day. Now, this piece that I wrote it in quite a kind of disjointed way, so I could then take certain elements, because I also did sound design for the game. But what I did, I wrote it so I could then take the stems, the orchestral stems, and then bring them back to the studio and then create layers and create loops that could then get fed into the actual game. I have never actually played the finished game, but I know that the music's in there. But that's what happened with that piece of music. I don't know if anyone's played it, if anyone knows any elements, but I don't.
I actually finished the game last week.
Did you?
Yes. You wrote as well, like in the game there's bits, you go find the clues.
Yeah.
And there's always sound in it.
Yes.
That's the thing that got calculated in the game, is this,
Yeah.
you're walking around the scene, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
But there's always like a string or something
Yeah.
to find a clue.
Yeah.
You wrote as well like the music like that?
Some of it. Yeah, we presented like loads of stings, because you've got the different characters, then you've got the different moods, and
Different parts of the game.
yeah, and just taking like a hit and sticking it through some reverb or sticking it through Reactor or something and creating an identity for different characters. So we kind of did that. We had a rough, like, they sent us a rough of the console and the game in its sort of early stages, but it was more kind of imagination and sending them the ideas.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
When you say you've got guys to orchestrate your music for you, what's obviously you've really done it as a mock-up yourself on the laptop.
Yeah.
To what sort of extent did you go to? Did you try and sort of do your own arrangement of it roughly, or did you just have it as a piano score and then sort of give that to the orchestrator, the arranger?
No, it was arranged,
Yeah.
actually, and he he stuck to the the question, to what extent is the arrangement? Yeah. It is. I was really surprised, because it was my first experience of working with a proper orchestrator, that he kept to the arrangement as it was and just embellished. And his skill of understanding the orchestra and the different instrumentation of the orchestra and how it works and how to break it apart. I'd written some parts and I was using samples, and it was laid out basically, and it was just brought to life. But the orchestrator actually, he orchestrated on pen and paper. So when we were at Abbey Road and the orchestra played back the piece of music for the first time, it's the first time anyone's heard it, in its form. And basically they took, the orchestra took about 4 goes per cue to get it right, and then it was nailed. I mean, it was the musicians were just amazing. Really, really special experience. Okay, I'm going to move on. This is something for Audi. Okay, that's. I worked with a friend of mine, Luke Gentry, who's an amazing sound designer, and we created that together. Now I'm really interested in, and we've spoken about this, I'm really interested in the combination of working in music and sound to picture, but the combination of the two working together, rather than it being sound design and music and then they get mixed at the last minute. And this was a real, this was the two of us, we created the whole thing together, basically, and the only guidance we had from this advert was the finger clicks. That's all we had, so everything was a blank canvas. And if you listen, like the sound design actually, even though it's really subtle and really minimal, the sound design is actually in the same key as the chords that are playing, which is something that Luke, the sound designer, he wasn't necessarily kind of that aware of, but with myself coming more from a musical side, I think that's a key thing to making it work together. Even if you're just using a tone, that's not necessarily musical, it will still have a key. And to get a join together with the music and sound design, that's kind of how that worked. So I like that piece a lot. So that's Audi. What am I going to show you next? Film score. Okay. This is a clip. I recently scored a feature film called Abducted, which came out 3 weeks ago. Pretty dark film, based in LA, and this is unmixed, ungraded. This was a cue that I worked on, and I haven't taken the clip from the film, so it has been mixed from this. I'll show you this and then I'll explain a bit about the film stuff. Okay, I'll stop that there. So this is my first feature film. I originally got into film I started working at Shepperton Film Studios about 3 years ago, working in the sound edit mix team, working on all the Disney and Marvel films. Now this gave me a really, I just wanted to learn about film and how sound and music and how it worked in film. I had no idea. So when I started working at Shepperton, I knew Pro Tools previously, but I'm working on these Pro Tools sessions in 5.1, 7.1, IMAX with just track lay of dialogue, sound design, Foley. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what I wanted to do in film, even though I came from a music background. I was interested in mixing, I'm interested in Foley, I'm interested in sound design. So working at Shepperton really gave me an insight into all the different aspects of working in film. And I kind of realised that the people that work in the different areas, whether you're a re-recording mixer, Foley artist, sound designer, sound mixer, all the different elements, everyone's really into their certain area that they work in and they're really skilled, and then the way that the whole thing comes together at the end is fascinating. So I've come from a music background, so I kind of thought, well, I'll get into the music side of it. And since being at Shepperton, I worked on a film called The Wedding Video, which is my first film as music editor. And I had the experience of working with the director, working with the editor, taking all the source tracks and basically editing to picture, which I'd done some of anyway, but not on this scale. And then also working with the composer, taking the score that had been written, and I would pre-mix that and do some additional music and fit that to picture. And then I was in the mix for the final 3 weeks of the film, and that was fascinating in Twickenham Studios, seeing how the mixer puts together all the different elements, folds in the music, the sound design. And then that led me on to doing the film score. I've actually just won an award for this soundtrack, which I was really pleased about. And film is definitely what I want to do more of. So, and TV. So that's that. What am I going to show you next? Fashion show, okay. Okay, so that's a fashion show from last year, end of last year. About 10 minutes long. All fashion shows are 10 minutes long. And this is the first time I created this music. This is the first time Paul Smith have actually had original music created in their 20 years they've been going. And when we're at the end of the runway performing this music, you're in sync with, you're on a mic, when the models are coming out. We basically had 2 weeks to create 10 minutes of music, and you're working with the design team, the fashion design team, and it's very similar. The process with doing work, whether it's fashion shows or working for advertising or working for a design agency, it's all about communication. It's all about working with people. It's understanding ideas. The only time that you don't need to really have any dialogue with anyone else is when you're creating your own music as an artist. You can do what you want. You can kind of do what you want with things like this, but it's within the realm of the ideas that the rest of the team are generating, basically, and that's what I really like. I really like working in teams of just different kinds of people that are working in different creative fields. That's what I find is exciting, and that's what pushes me all the time. So really enjoyed working on this. Okay, what do I have next? I'll show this. This is a quick piece I did for Nokia. This is for their in-store This is basically split into 4 video screens for their in-store. About that. That was a commission from a design agency, Tom Hinkson Studios, who they do a lot of record covers that you would know, Massive Attack, Rolling Stones, Nick Cave, and they also work in a lot of moving image, and they commissioned me to do the music for that, and then that went into the stores. So that was how that worked. I'm now going to show you a film which is about 5 minutes long. It's actually an interview of me talking, which is a bit weird, but it's an exhibition I've been involved in called Design X Ski, and it's basically, this is to show sound design. The exhibition, it was based in the Zaha Hadid Gallery in West London, and it's 5 designers, like visual designers from different areas, and I was chosen as the last designer, as working within sound. And it's like a game of Chinese whispers, so the curator gives the first designer an idea, they come up with a concept, they make something, that object then gets passed on to the second designer, and then they create an object being inspired from the previous object. And then the objects get passed down the line, but none of the designers know the previous history. They only know the object before them. So I was given marble. The designer before me had created these kind of for the home, like marble structures, and the designer had used this method called book matching, which is a way of cutting marble in half so that the grain is basically mirrored. And they asked me to come in as a designer, and I created some sound music based on marble, which I'd never done before, and then it was played. I'm very interested in sound in architecture, and this is a short film on it. I'm interpreting the marble and creating sound as I imagine the marble would sound to how it looks visually. I'm interested in the idea of a kaleidoscope and the link of kaleidoscope and sound, which actually I thought could tie in with the book matching method that the designer before me used. Once I saw the marble and thought more about it and started trying out some ideas, I decided I wanted to keep it purely about sound and not creating a physical object, and thinking about the sound as design in terms of where it's coming from the object before, how the sound is going to be used as something functional in relation to design in the space that it's going to be in. I want to create a definite direct link with the marble and the object. So when you look at the marble and you listen to the sound, it's like an extension of the marble. And this is adding another layer to your senses. So I'm taking a snapshot of a piece of the marble. It's pretty exciting actually. I didn't think I would get that excited by it. Converting that through a computer program into sound. And from the sound, I'm extracting a pattern and creating a sound piece. This half is the grain from one of the pieces of marble. I book matched it, and I like this image that was created. I changed the grading and put it into some software that will translate the grain, the shape and thickness and density of the grain into sound. And you can see this image across the top. That's a kind of rough shape of what's happening with the grain. From there, I output a sound file, which is this. That's the visual representation, so that's the actual sound of how this looks like. And from here, I listened to the sound, looked at the shape, looked at the marble, and just started extracting rhythms and patterns from the sound file, which so the beginning of the sound is the grain here, which is quite thick, and you get, and the flow down, you've got this kind of flow through. I like the shape of the grain, the way it flows along, and it kind of dissipates out at the end. So then what I did, I took a small section of the sound, of that sound file, and just listened to it, just got into the sound, see what patterns came from it. So this is about a quarter of the sound, and I can hear a pattern in there, and a melody, and a rhythm. And from that, I extracted the sound out from that, which then became this initial piece. Through the process of creating the sound, creating the music, I'm looking and flicking between different pictures of the different marble, and just what that represents to me, really, how I feel about it. It changes. The more I look at this section, there's a lot of depth within that visually, and there's a lot of movement. I could take this image and take this white line here, and I can almost hear how that sounds without even putting it into the piece of software. The tone will rise up, it will get more intense with the movement. I'm surprised that I do get a lot from this marble that I didn't think I would get, actually. I've chosen to have the sound playing in the gallery space when the exhibition is on. So I'm being sympathetic to the atmosphere of the space, what's happening. I'm linking the sound from the object before, but then also how it will create a feeling within the space. Okay, so that's into the frame. We had an exhibition at the end of January in this red gallery in Shoreditch, and my idea for the sound, coming as what I'm trying to achieve is to, if anyone's seen Gravity, that when you're holding the robotic arm, the haptic arm, basically what we have done is modelled the environment of the painting actually in 3D, but using sound as your navigation. So as you move the robotic arm, the sound changes, so you can, when you go under the water, the sound actually goes down as if you're under the water. When you move up, you can basically splash around and go into the air and move around. There's 14 speakers all around you, and we developed Max MSP for the 3D sound, and then also C++ for the robotic arm, and then join them together. But my idea for this is to essentially be able to create the sound of what you would hear in Gravity, as in the film, the sound design element, but be able to manipulate it in real time, that you're actually in control, and not just of one sound, but all the sounds move around you as you virtually move around the space. So that is, and it's quite varied, but all these different elements that I work on, they all kind of tie in with each other. There is a link, and everything kind of feeds off of each other. And it's through this exhibition that I ended up here, I think, isn't it, Fionn? Thank you. So yeah, that's my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Hello.
Hello. We'll make sure we'll first point out that done is very beautiful. The marble and taking creating an algorithm to bring that into the soundscape is very beautiful. My actual question is actually coming off background AMR.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You were saying about working in the game that you don't have the visual that you work with. You're trying to create your soundscape. work with?
Oh, there was actually, okay, LA Noire, what information are we given to work with? We're given, like with LA Noire, I came on board, Andrew Hale, the original composer, I came on board and worked very closely with him, which is how I ended up composing that piece that I played. But there's a whole, the research, the sound, in terms of music, there's a lot of musical research that went on, the kind of soundtrack for noir films. The team of LA Noire were researching the geographic layout of LA for 4 years before they even started making the game. They wanted it to be really spot on. So, like musically, there was already a kind of a theme to what to kind of how the music was going to be.
It's kind of not quite what I'm asking. I understand you've got the style you've got to work with.
Yeah.
It's more like, I understand, I haven't even played the game, but I can understand where I'm going to go and play it.
Yeah.
So, what I mean is you have that background that you're going to work from, but it's more like what they actually give you to, what are they actually come around and go, we need this done. What do they actually give you? Because you haven't got, as opposed to, like you were saying with the video, with that you've actually got like a visual thing you actually create the sound.
Oh, we do have like.
I think that's kind of a lot easier because you have a solid thing.
Oh, they do give you they give you a PlayStation, like an unbranded machine, and you can play like a rough of the game. And there's silence and wireframe and stuff like that, and then they put in certain bits of sound, so you kind of you do get a bit of an idea as to what's going on. It's not like you're. No, because it's such a massive game. You're going on cues. You've got a script sheet and you've got character sheets and you've got. It's more written explanations as to what's actually happening at different sections of the game. And then you're creating for those different sections. And we were kind of doing it blind, really. We were just creating. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot, you get everything written down. You get the whole script sheet. Like with LA Noire, it was most of the cast from Mad Men that were actually in the game that they filmed. So they had like a casting director and things like that. It's the first game that's been put onto IMDb, which is the film site. Yes?
I was asked, what is your main instrument? Are you generally a pianist or a keyboard player? Because it's just that I don't think you, forgive me if you did mention what you play, but
I didn't.
Okay. The only reason I asked is because I notice a lot of the music you play.
Yeah.
Certainly don't take this the wrong way, it's great, but a lot of it is very drum, rhythm orientated, which is fine, which is great. But the only thing that was different that you showed us in respect of style is the orchestration stuff. So I was just wondering, is that from the background you've come from that you're mostly into doing sort of that style of music? Because I'm just wondering whether you're interested in going down that avenue of doing big orchestral music as well.
Okay.
Opportunity. That's something I asked because most of what you played was that style. So I was wondering if that's what you want to develop and do more. Well, that's what you do. Okay,
so the question, what's my main instrument and do I want to go down the route of orchestration?
Yeah, just that style of music because you're talking about into films and stuff as well.
Well, I trained as a child as a classical pianist and I played percussion in an orchestra and I used to play Spanish classical guitar, but then I stopped it all. I think I was quite good at it, so I sort of like pushed into this thing, but then I stopped it and then I started going out with my mates. And then I started again when I was like in my sort of early 20s, but because I'd had all this classical training, I didn't know how to improvise, I didn't know how to jam in a band or anything like this. It was completely alien to me. So I just sat down and with a piece of music and a piano and just started learning how to just improvise basically. And like everything that I've done, I've never been to college for music. I've always just taught myself. But It's interestingly, I have actually done, like I recently did a documentary for Channel 4, cutting edge documentary, and there's no beats in the whole of the score for that, and I did like over half an hour, and a lot of that's kind of modern classical, minimal, and some of the feature film that I haven't shown you, like half of it's just piano, and then some of it's just very kind of almost like horror music, sound design stuff. There's a piece that I did for this cutting edge documentary, and I was just studying that big Hans Zimmer scores, and I created a piece for a key scene, this chase scene, with an orchestra library, and I'd never done it before, and it ended up, I'm really proud of that piece, but it took me ages. I was just pulling apart different scores from like Born Identity and different Hans Zimmers and different things, and just seeing how the orchestration worked, because that's kind of what I wanted to do for the scene. They didn't actually say, they didn't necessarily want that. You know, they gave a sort of feeling in terms of like a TV thing, if it's a TV program, and the same for a film, you know, and you're sitting down talking to the director, and you're talking about the different characters and the kind of emotions and where you are within the film or the documentary, and you don't necessarily want to give away too much of the character with certain kind of style of music, for instance. But then I suppose, because it's quite varied what I do, I've got quite a lot of choice of where I can sort of pull things in from. And then I like to sort of push it in different directions. Yeah.
How was it being a producer and the people you produce? So besides yourself, did you release them on your own label or on other labels? And if so, did you get commission on that, and how exactly did that work?
Okay, so how did I get commissioned in terms of working as a producer with other artists? It's generally come from personal relationships, really, meeting people and people like hearing, being introduced. My first production job, like proper production job, I got commissioned by the record label and the manager of the band. It was this band called Keith, and it was the first actual band that I'd produced, and they contacted me and they wanted me to produce the lead single for this album. So it was down to me. I booked the studio, met the band, and I had no relationship with the band, and I had 2 days to record and mix a single that was going to be the lead single for the album. And the band, they hated me, or the lead singer hated me. They were like, "What's this guy been brought in to do this? This thing, we've never met him before." And that's the only time, but I delivered it. You know, my job was to actually produce a single that represented the band and what I thought was the right thing, that's going to be accepted by the label, by the management, and it's going to get put on radio. So there's quite a lot of pressure there when you haven't built up relationships really with, I kind of knew the A&R person and the manager, but that was about it. I had no relationship with the band. So that was tough, actually. But then now a lot of the artists, and then, I worked with another artist though in Brady. I was commissioned to do that. Igor Volk I met through friends of friends. So it's kind of varies, actually. It kind of varies. But at the moment, I'm not really taking on other production work. I'm just finishing a couple of albums because it's quite time consuming, and especially when you're actually taking on an album, it's quite, I enjoy working on singles with an artist because then it can be quite focused, one track and move on. Yes?
Because obviously you're involved in the sound design element and musical elements of quite a few projects.
Yep.
When you're writing stuff just with music, when you're just involved in the music side,
Yep.
do you take into consideration sort of what frequency spectrum you're using in the music, and whether that would conflict with the sound design sort of side of things? Do you converse with the sound design team at all about what to use, what frequency should be left out, what should be?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's quite yes, definitely. Basically, do I Yeah, it's working with a sound designer, being aware of frequencies is being aware of frequencies and being aware of, especially as well, listening to frequencies of dialogue, because if you've got certain lines that are conflicting with the frequencies of the dialogue, then it's just going to clash. So that sort of going on from the actual sound design element is another thing to take into consideration. Yeah.
Just very quickly, so when you compose music, yeah, that, great stuff, I say.
Thank you.
So when you compose music, what's the kind of process you go through? Do you start with the piano, kind of, or guitar, or kind of, if you're not working with directors, if you compose your own music for adverts, for example?
Okay, so if I'm composing my own music, my own music as an artist or as a...
An artist or a piece of music for...
What's the starting point?
Yeah.
Visual images are quite, as a starting point, visual images are, it can be so many different things. You know, just sitting down, working out chords, like a chord progression with a particular basic sound.
So would you take piano first or guitar because you play pianist?
Don't know, I might take a piano for, I don't know, it's varied. It could be loads of things. It could be, I could hear something and just sample something and use that, or I might just record something on my phone, or a lot of the time with a lot of the stuff that I'm doing at the moment is that an inspiration which is not stylistic in terms of the kind of music is coming from visual cues. And say, for instance, the Design X Ski piece that I wrote, I had all these still images of marble, and I had 3 monitors in my studio, and I had all these close-up images of marble, and it was almost like working on a film, but it wasn't moving. You know, the screen wasn't moving, and I really got into what I was getting from the marble as if it was a film. So the starting point for that, well, I had the initial sound source, but it was more about a kind of mood that I wanted to create. So creating sounds that then tie in with the mood that I'm trying to generate. So it's very much about the sort of creating something that is the mood, and sort of, I suppose, deciding on what the kind of mood is. You know, if it's going to be a quite upbeat, dark electronic track, then that's what I know I want to create. So then, you know, I'll get some drums up and a bass, for instance. You know, hope that helps.